I am Karen, 32 years old, and I teach third grade at Pinewood Elementary School. My birthday dinner was supposed to be a celebration, a night where I felt special for once. I had no idea it would become the moment my life shattered and rebuilt in ways I never imagined. My sister Lisa always wanted what was mine, but stealing my husband Jake, that was a new low. What they did not know was that I had a secret of my own. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe to hear how I turned the tables on their betrayal. Growing up in our middle-class home in suburban Michigan, I was always the responsible one. As the firstborn, I learned to be independent, hardworking, and considerate. My parents, Robert and Nancy, expected more from me, while my younger sister Lisa, just 3 years behind me, seemed to live under a different set of rules entirely. From the moment Lisa was born, she became the golden child. My parents would brush off my accomplishments while celebrating her every minor achievement. When I made honor roll, they would nod approvingly. When Lisa passed a spelling test, they would take her out for ice cream. This pattern continued throughout our childhood, creating a divide between us that only grew wider with time. The earliest memory I have of Lisa taking something of mine was when I was 7. I had received a beautiful porcelain doll for Christmas with auburn hair that matched my own. I treasured it, kept it displayed on my shelf rather than playing with it. Lisa then threw a tantrum until our parents made me share. Within hours, the doll returned to me with broken limbs and tangled hair. When I cried, my mother told me, "Karen, be the bigger person. She is just a baby." But Lisa was not just a baby. She was calculated even then. As we grew older, her habit of taking my possessions evolved. My favorite sweater would disappear from my closet only to appear on her the next week. The makeup I saved my allowance for would mysteriously end up half empty. My school projects would somehow inspire remarkably similar ones from her, always earning higher praise from our parents. By high school, her target shifted to my social connections. The first time Lisa stole a boyfriend from me was sophomore year. His name was Tyler, and we had been dating for 3 months. I thought it was serious, at least as serious as high school relationships can be. One day after school, I found them holding hands behind the gymnasium. When confronted, Lisa simply shrugged and said, "He likes me better." Not my fault. My parents sided with her, suggesting I must have done something to push him away. This pattern repeated with 2 more boyfriends before graduation. Each time, Lisa would bat her eyelashes, flip her blonde hair, and somehow convince these boys that she was the superior sister. Each time, my parents would find a way to blame me. Despite everything, I tried to love my sister. I convinced myself that one day she would mature, that our relationship could heal once we grew up. I invited her to college events when I started at State University, tried to include her in my new life. But even then, she found ways to undermine me, flirting with my male friends and spreading embarrassing stories from our childhood. When I met Jake during my junior year of college, something felt different. He was studying engineering, smart and dedicated, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence. Unlike the others, he saw through Lisa immediately. The first time they met, when she visited campus and tried her usual flirtatious routine, Jake politely excused himself and later told me, "Your sister seems a bit intense." It was the diplomatic understatement of the century, but it made me love him even more. Jake proposed after graduation, and we planned a simple but elegant wedding. Lisa was notably cold during the engagement, making passive-aggressive comments about my dress, the venue, even my choice of flowers. On my wedding day 5 years ago, she showed up in a white dress, claiming she did not realize it was inappropriate. My mother defended her, of course, but for once, I did not care. Jake was looking at me like I was the only woman in the world as we said our vows. We bought a small house in a nice neighborhood, painted the walls together on weekends, and planted a garden in the backyard. Jake advanced quickly at his engineering firm, while I found fulfillment teaching young children. For 3 years, things were peaceful. Lisa had moved to Chicago for work, and the distance helped ease tensions. We saw her only at holidays, where she would make the occasional barbed comment, but otherwise kept to herself. Then came the pressure to start a family. My mother began making comments at every family gathering. "When am I going to be a grandmother?" she would ask, looking pointedly at me. Jake and I had been trying for over a year with no success. Each negative pregnancy test felt like a personal failure. I scheduled doctor appointments, tracked my cycle, took supplements, but nothing worked. The strain began to show in our marriage. Jake became quieter, spending more time at work. I tried to talk to him about our fertility struggles, but he would change the subject or claim he was too tired to discuss something so emotional. I attributed it to male discomfort with the topic, to the pressure he might feel as the husband. About 6 months ago, Lisa moved back to our city, claiming she missed family. At first, Jake seemed annoyed by her return, avoiding family dinners when she would be present, but then gradually something shifted. He started working later hours, his explanations vague. His phone would ding with text messages that he would shield from my view. He began taking calls in another room, his voice hushed. I noticed other changes too. Jake suddenly became interested in his appearance, buying new clothes and changing his hairstyle. He started going to the gym regularly after 5 years of claiming he had no time for it. The most telling sign was when he grew distant physically. The man who once could not keep his hands off me now tensed when I touched him. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jake loved me. He would never betray me. But the knot in my stomach grew tighter with each passing day, with each secretive smile at his phone, with each vague explanation for his whereabouts. Something was wrong in my marriage, and I was terrified to discover what it was. The first concrete evidence came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon 2 months ago. Jake had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. I had never been the type to snoop, believing that trust was the foundation of our marriage. But when his phone lit up with a message preview that read, "Cannot wait to see you later. Wear that blue shirt I like," something inside me broke. The sender was labeled work project, but Jake did not have any colleagues who would text him about his clothing choices. With shaking hands, I picked up his phone. It was locked, but I knew his passcode, the date we met. The fact that he had not changed it made what I found even more painful. The message thread with work project contained hundreds of texts, many of them explicit, all of them devastating. They referred to meetups at hotels, inside jokes, and plans for the future. The contact had no profile picture, and there were no names mentioned in the texts, but the familiarity in the messages suggested this had been going on for months. I replaced the phone exactly where he had left. It went to our bedroom and silently cried into a pillow. When Jake emerged from the shower, I pretended everything was normal. I needed more information before confronting him. I needed to know who had stolen my husband. The next day, I called in sick to work and followed Jake after he left home. Instead of driving to his office downtown, he went to a small cafe in a neighborhood across town. I parked across the street, large sunglasses hiding my tear-swollen eyes. 20 minutes later, my world collapsed entirely when I saw Lisa walk into the same cafe. Through the window, I watched them embrace for too long to be innocent, saw their hands entwine across the table. Still, I needed absolute confirmation. In a daze, I contacted a private investigator, a woman named Diana, who specialized in infidelity cases. Her rates were high, but I withdrew money from my personal savings account, an emergency fund my mother had advised me to keep separate from our joint finances. Every woman needs her own money, she had said, one piece of maternal wisdom I was now grateful for. Diana worked quickly and discreetly. A week later, she delivered a manila envelope to me during my lunch break at school. Inside were dozens of photos, Jake and Lisa entering a hotel together, having dinner at a restaurant an hour outside town, kissing in his car in a park. The most recent photos showed them shopping at a jewelry store, Lisa trying on necklaces while Jake stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders. That evening, I sat alone in my classroom, long after the students had gone, staring at the evidence of my husband and sister's betrayal. The physical pain was unexpected, a crushing sensation in my chest that made it difficult to breathe. I had suspected he was cheating, but with my own sister. The two people I should have been able to trust most in this world had created a secret life together, laughing behind my back. I considered confronting them, immediately imagining the satisfaction of watching their faces when they realized they had been caught. But a small, calculating voice inside urged me to wait. If I confronted them now, they would simply apologize, make excuses, maybe even blame me. Lisa would cry to our parents, who would inevitably pressure me to forgive her. Jake would swear it was a mistake, beg for another chance. No, I needed to be strategic. I needed to understand the full extent of their betrayal before deciding my next move. So I began to pay closer attention, to create opportunities to gather more information. 2 weeks later, I pretended to visit a friend, but instead parked down the street from our house. As expected, Lisa's car appeared less than 30 minutes after I left. I slipped back into the house through our rarely used side door and stood silently in the hallway closet, listening as they talked in our living room on the couch Jake and I had picked out together. "When are you going to tell her?" Lisa asked, her voice carrying that whiny quality I remembered from childhood demands. "After her birthday," Jake replied. "It is going to destroy her. I cannot ruin her birthday, too." Lisa laughed, a sound that sent chills through my body. "Always so considerate. That is why I love you. But I am tired of sneaking around. I want everyone to know you chose me." "I know, baby. Just a few more weeks. We will tell her after her party, and then we can be together properly." "I have the perfect plan," Lisa said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that I strained to hear. "Let us make her birthday memorable. I will make an announcement at the dinner about us, about the baby." Can you imagine her face? Jake hesitated. "That seems cruel. Cannot we just tell her privately afterward?" "Where is the fun in that? After years of being perfect, Karen's shadow, I deserve my moment. Trust me, it will be worth it to see her finally lose that composed facade." The mention of a baby sent me reeling. They were not just having an affair. They were planning a life together, creating a family. The family Jake and I had tried so desperately to start. I slipped out as quietly as I had entered, drove to a park, and screamed until my throat was raw. Then, with a strange clarity that comes from absolute betrayal, I made a decision. I would let them have their moment at my birthday dinner. But it would not go as they planned. First, I needed more information about this alleged pregnancy. If Lisa was truly pregnant, how far along was she? Was Jake really the father? Given what I knew about my sister, I had my doubts. But there was something else bothering me, something that did not add up. Jake and I had been trying to conceive for over a year with no success. We had both undergone initial fertility tests, though Jake had been reluctant and had postponed his follow-up appointments. Could there be something he was hiding from me? I scheduled an appointment with our family doctor, Dr. Phillips, and asked directly about Jake's test results. The doctor initially hesitated, citing patient confidentiality, but when I explained the situation, his expression softened with pity. "Karen, I cannot show you his medical records without consent, but I strongly suggest you have a conversation with your husband. Sometimes men have difficulty accepting certain medical realities." That vague statement was enough to fuel my suspicion. I went home and searched through Jake's office while he was at work. In the back of his filing cabinet behind tax documents from 3 years ago, I found a medical report he had hidden from me. The diagnosis was clear: Jake had azoospermia, a condition meaning he produced no sperm. He was completely sterile and had been since birth due to a genetic condition. The report was dated from before our wedding. He had known all along that he could never father children naturally. He had let me blame myself, take fertility supplements, track my cycle, and cry monthly over negative pregnancy tests, all while knowing the truth. And now, impossibly, Lisa was claiming to be pregnant with his child. Either she was lying about the pregnancy or she was lying about Jake being the father. Either way, my birthday dinner was about to become a reckoning none of them were prepared for. With my 32nd birthday approaching, I threw myself into creating the perfect celebration. I reserved a private room at Bellamy's, the most expensive restaurant in town. I sent invitations to our closest friends and family, including my parents, who would be driving in from their retirement community 2 hours away. I selected a form-fitting black dress that made me feel powerful, ordered a custom cake, and arranged for champagne to be served upon arrival. Jake seemed surprised by my enthusiasm. "You are really going all out this year," he commented as I finalized the menu selections. I smiled brightly. "Well, 32 is a special birthday. I want everyone I love in one room." If he detected the edge in my voice, he did not show it. Instead, he offered to pick up my parents from their hotel before the dinner. "I want to help make your day special," he said, kissing my cheek with lips that had been on my sister's body. I thanked him sweetly, while mentally adding another item to his list of betrayals. 2 could play the deception game, and I was quickly becoming an expert. In the week before my birthday, I made 3 important calls. First, I contacted our family doctor again and asked him to provide a sealed official copy of Jake's medical report. Dr. Phillips understood the gravity of my situation and agreed, though he again encouraged me to handle the information with care. "Medical conditions can be a source of deep shame," he advised. especially those affecting a man's sense of his masculinity. Thank you, Dr. Phillips, I replied. But my husband's shame has caused 5 years of pain that could have been avoided with honesty. My second call was to Diana, the private investigator. I asked her to expand her investigation into Lisa's private life beyond her relationship with Jake. If my sister was claiming to be pregnant with a sterile man's baby, I wanted to know who else she had been seeing. Diana called back 3 days later. Your sister has been busy, she said, her voice professionally neutral despite the sordid details she was about to share. In the past month alone, I have documented her with 3 different men besides your husband. One appears to be a colleague, another the bartender at a place she frequents, and the third is married from what I can tell. Can you send me photos? Discreetly, I asked. Already on their way to the secure email you provided, she confirmed. Will you be needing anything else? No, I said, feeling a strange calm. This is exactly what I needed. My third call was to a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague whose own marriage had ended badly the year before. The attorney, Patricia Blackwell, listened calmly as I outlined my situation, occasionally asking clarifying questions. You have strong grounds for a favorable divorce settlement, she assured me. Infidelity with a family member, concealment of medical information material to the marriage, emotional abuse regarding the fertility issues. I can have paperwork ready next week if you decide to proceed. I thanked her and scheduled a follow-up appointment for the day after my birthday. One way or another, my marriage would be over by then. With my preparations in place, I turned my attention to gathering and organizing the evidence. I created a folder on my laptop with the photos from Diana, both of Jake with Lisa and of Lisa with her other lovers. I printed key images, placing them in an elegant envelope along with Jake's medical report. I added copies of their text conversations I had managed to capture from Jake's phone when he was showering. The morning of my birthday, Jake presented me with a velvet jewelry box containing a diamond bracelet that must have cost thousands. The receipt that he had carelessly left in his suit pocket showed he had purchased it the same day he had taken Lisa shopping for jewelry. It is beautiful, I said, slipping it onto my wrist. Must have been expensive. You are worth it, he replied, looking relieved at my positive reaction. I want today to be perfect for you. If only he knew how perfect it would be, just not in the way he imagined. Lisa called mid-morning, her voice syrupy sweet. Happy birthday, big sister. I cannot wait to see you tonight. I have the most amazing news to share with everyone. Oh, I responded innocently. What kind of news? It would not be a surprise if I told you now, silly. But trust me, it is going to make this birthday one you never forget. She had no idea how right she was. As evening approached, I felt surprisingly calm. I had spent weeks cycling through rage, devastation, and grief. Now, hours away from my planned confrontation, I felt only a cool determination. I carefully applied my makeup, styled my hair in loose waves, and slipped into my black dress. Around my neck, I placed the locket my grandmother had given me. Before she died, a reminder of a woman who had taught me that self-respect was more valuable than keeping the peace. Before leaving for the restaurant, I called my best friend Sarah, the only person who knew what was about to unfold. Sarah and I had been friends since college, and she had never warmed to either Jake or Lisa, sensing something off about both of them. Are you sure you want to do it this way? She asked, concern evident in her voice. It is going to be very public. They were planning to humiliate me publicly anyway, I replied. At least this way I control the narrative, and I need witnesses, especially my parents, to see the truth all at once, so no one can rewrite what happened later. I will be right beside you the whole time, Sarah promised. Call me when you are on the way, and I will make sure to arrive early. As Jake drove us to the restaurant, he kept glancing at me nervously. You look beautiful tonight, he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Thank you, I replied, the evidence envelope secure in my purse between us. I feel like tonight is going to change everything. He swallowed hard, likely interpreting my words as a sad premonition rather than the promise they truly were. If he felt guilty, it did not stop him from continuing with their plan. His phone buzzed with a text, and I caught Lisa's name on the screen before he hurriedly silenced it. The stage was set, the actors were in place. My birthday performance was about to begin, but the ending would be very different from what the traitors expected. Bellamy's private dining room glowed with soft amber lighting, highlighting the crystal glasses and fine china arranged on the long table. The walls, painted a deep burgundy, created an intimate atmosphere that would soon be shattered by revelations no one saw coming. A small area near the head of the table had been cleared for the birthday cake presentation later in the evening. Sarah arrived first, as promised, embracing me tightly and whispering encouragement in my ear. My parents were next, my mother fussing over my hair and asking if I had lost weight, my father awkwardly handing over a gift bag before finding the bar. Jake's parents had declined the invitation, citing a previously planned cruise, a convenient absence that now seemed suspect. Friends and colleagues filtered in, creating a buffer of normalcy with their birthday wishes and small talk. Jake stood by my side, playing the role of devoted husband, with an Oscar-worthy performance, his hand resting possessively on my lower back as he chatted with my coworkers. Lisa arrived fashionably late, making an entrance in a tight red dress that showcased a stomach with no visible signs of pregnancy. Her eyes locked with Jake's across the room, a split-second exchange that no one else would have noticed if they were not looking for it. I was looking for it. "Karen," she squealed air, kissing both my cheeks. "Happy birthday, you look so good for 32. The backhanded compliment was typical Lisa, but I merely smiled. "Thank you for coming. I am so glad everyone could be here tonight." Dinner proceeded with excruciating slowness. I picked at my filet mignon while monitoring Lisa, who conspicuously drank water, instead of the wine being passed around. Jake grew increasingly fidgety as the meal progressed, checking his watch and exchanging glances with my sister when he thought I was not looking. My mother, seated across from Lisa, noticed her abstention from alcohol. "Not drinking tonight, dear. That is unusual for you." Lisa touched her stomach meaningfully but said nothing, a gesture that made my mother's eyes widen with speculation. The pieces were being laid out exactly as they had planned. After the main course plates were cleared, the server announced that the cake would be brought out momentarily. This was apparently the cue Lisa had been waiting for. She stood tapping her water glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "Before we bring out the cake, I hope my dear sister would not mind if I shared some wonderful news on her special day." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. The room quieted, all eyes turning to her. Jake looked simultaneously terrified and resigned, his face pale under the restaurant lighting. "Karen has always been the perfect one, doing everything right in the right order." Lisa continued, her tone taking on an edge. "College, career, marriage. She has always been our parents' pride and joy." My mother beamed, oblivious to what was coming. My father shifted uncomfortably, perhaps sensing the undercurrent of resentment in Lisa's voice. "But there is one thing Karen has not been able to do despite trying for years," Lisa said, her hand moving to rest on her flat stomach. "Something that I can announce today has happened for me." The room grew tense, a collective intake of breath as people began to realize where this was heading. "I am pregnant," Lisa announced triumphantly, her eyes fixed on me, waiting for my reaction. "And the father is someone very special." Murmurs rippled through the room. My mother gasped, her hand covering her mouth. My father's expression darkened, though whether from displeasure or confusion was unclear. In the momentary confusion, Lisa drove in the final stake. "Jake and I are having a baby. We are in love, and we are going to be a family." She reached out her hand, and Jake, after a moment's hesitation, stood and joined her, taking her outstretched fingers in his. "We did not mean for this to happen," Jake addressed the stunned room, unable to meet my eyes. "But sometimes the heart wants what it wants." Lisa smirked at me, triumph blazing in her expression. "We are a family now," she sneered clearly, expecting me to collapse in tears or explode in rage. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Sarah half rose from her seat, fury on her face. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. My mother went ghostly pale, looking between her daughters in horror. But I did not give them the reaction they expected. Instead, I calmly reached for my water glass, stood, and tapped it for attention. The room gradually quieted, all eyes now on me, confusion and pity in their expressions. "I would like to propose a toast," I said, my voice steady and clear, "to revelations and truth. They say the truth will set you free, though sometimes the journey there is painful." Lisa's smirk faltered, slightly confusion crossing her face at my composed response. "Lisa, Jake, congratulations on your announcement. It is truly remarkable. I let my gaze sweep the room, making eye contact with each stunned guest. In fact, it is nothing short of a medical miracle. The puzzled expressions around the table gave me a sense of power I had never experienced before. Jake's confident posture began to slump as uncertainty crept into his features. Lisa's triumphant smile froze her eyes, narrowing suspiciously. You see, I continued opening my purse and removing the sealed envelope before sharing in your joy fully. I think there are some facts everyone should be aware of. I broke the medical office seal on the envelope with deliberate slowness, extracting the documents inside. Jake, would you like to explain to everyone why this pregnancy is a miracle, or shall I? His face drained of all color. Karen, please. This is not the time or place. Actually, I think this is exactly the right time and place since you both chose it for your announcement. I turned to address our guests. What my husband and sister failed to mention is a medical reality that makes their story impossible. I held up the official medical report, its hospital letterhead clearly visible. Jake has a condition called azoospermia. He produces no sperm and cannot father children. He has known this since before our wedding, but chose to hide it from me while watching me blame myself for our inability to conceive. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. My mother covered her mouth, her eyes darting between Jake and Lisa. My father stood completely still, his expression hardening into anger. Jake stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Karen, stop. This is private medical information. Was private, I corrected him. Until you decided to use my supposed infertility as cover for your affair with my sister. Until you let me think for years that our fertility issues were my fault. Until you and Lisa decided to announce a medically impossible pregnancy at my birthday dinner. Lisa laughed nervously, tossing her hair. This is ridiculous. Look, I understand you are upset, but making up medical conditions, that is low, Karen, even for you. I am not making anything up, I replied calmly, handing the medical report to my father, who had moved closer to examine it. This report is from Dr. Phillips, our family doctor. You can call his office to verify its authenticity. As my father scanned the document, his expression shifted from doubt to shock. He passed it to my mother, whose hands shook as she read. But I am pregnant, Lisa insisted, her voice rising. Jake and I are having a baby. Oh, I do not doubt you might be pregnant, Lisa, I said, pulling out more papers from the envelope. But if you are, Jake is definitely not the father. I spread photographs across the table, pictures taken by Diana of Lisa, with 3 different men in intimate situations. According to the private investigator I hired when I first suspected their affair, my sister has been quite busy over the past few months. Jake is just one of 4 men she has been sleeping with. Lisa lunged for the photos, but Sarah deftly gathered them up and moved them out of her reach. Several guests had stood for a better view, and the murmuring had grown louder. You had me followed, Lisa shrieked, her composure completely shattered. What kind of psycho does that? The kind who wants proof before confronting her cheating husband and backstabbing sister, I replied evenly. The kind who suspected they were planning something, like tonight's ambush. Jake stood frozen, staring at the photos Sarah was now deliberately displaying to the room. Lisa, what is this? You said I was the only one. You said the baby was mine. Lisa rounded on him, her face contorted with rage. Of course I said that. Look at you, all noble about providing for the baby. How could I tell you it might be someone else's? Might be, Jake repeated, his voice hollow. So, you do not even know who the father is. Does it matter, Lisa snapped. We are in love. You said you wanted to leave Karen anyway. My mother let out a sob, finally finding her voice. How could you do this, Lisa? Your own sister's husband. Lisa turned on her, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. Oh, now you take her side, perfect Karen who could do no wrong. You always loved her more. That is not true, my mother protested weakly. We love both our daughters equally. Bullshit, Lisa spat. She was always the golden child, the responsible one, the smart one. I was just an afterthought. So you slept with her husband as payback, my father demanded, his voice thundering through the now silent room. You destroyed your sister's marriage out of jealousy. While my family imploded, Jake approached me, his voice low and pleading. Karen, I can explain. I never meant to hurt you. Lisa and I, it just happened. I looked at the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, and felt nothing but pity. There is nothing to explain, Jake. You lied to me from the beginning. You knew you could never give me children but let me torture myself monthly with negative pregnancy tests rather than admit the truth. I was afraid you would not marry me if you knew, he admitted, shame evident in his downcast eyes. You were right. I would not have married you, but not because you cannot have children. I would not have married a liar. I slid my wedding ring off my finger and placed it on the table. I have filed for divorce. Patricia Blackwell is my attorney. She will be contacting you tomorrow. Jake blanched at the mention of the attorney's name. Patricia's reputation for securing favorable settlements for wronged spouses was well known in our city. Lisa, meanwhile, had moved from attacking our mother to turning on Jake. You told me Karen was the problem. You said the doctors confirmed she was the infertile one. I never said that, Jake protested. You assumed, and I did not correct you. So you cannot have children at all, ever, and you let me plan my future around you. Their mutual recriminations escalated while the dinner guests looked on in stunned silence. Some had the decency to appear uncomfortable at witnessing such a private implosion, while others were clearly committing every detail to memory for future gossip. My parents had moved together, my mother crying quietly, while my father held her. They looked suddenly older, the foundation of our family cracked beyond repair. My father caught my eye and mouthed, "I am sorry," a simple acknowledgement that came decades too late, but which I appreciated nonetheless. I signaled to the server, who had been hovering uncertainly at the edge of the chaos. "I think we will skip the cake. Would you bring the check, please?" As Jake and Lisa continued their bitter argument, I walked around the table thanking each guest individually for coming. Some embraced me, others simply squeezed my hand in wordless support. The surreal calm I felt was like floating above the scene, observing the destruction of my old life with detached interest. When I reached my parents, my mother clutched my arm. "Karen, I had no idea about any of this." "I know, Mom. We should talk about what happens now. As a family, we need to address this." I gently removed her hand. "There is nothing to address tonight. I am going home with Sarah. I need some space from all of you." My father nodded in understanding, even as disappointment flashed in my mother's eyes. Always the peacemaker, always expected to be the bigger person to sacrifice my feelings for family harmony. Not anymore. As I prepared to leave, Jake broke away from his argument with Lisa and rushed to my side. "Karen, wait. Do not leave like this. We can talk about this privately." "There is nothing left to say," I told him, my voice quiet but firm. "Please have your things out of the house by noon tomorrow. The locks will be changed in the afternoon." He grabbed my wrist, desperation in his eyes. "You cannot just throw away 5 years of marriage." "I did not throw it away," I said, removing his hand. "You did the moment you decided my sister was more important than our vows." And with that, I walked out of Bellamy's restaurant with my head held high, Sarah by my side, leaving behind the wreckage of betrayal and lies. The cool night air felt like freedom on my skin, the first breath of a new life I never expected, but now welcomed with open arms. The aftermath of my birthday dinner revelation cascaded through the following days, like an avalanche destroying everything in its path, but clearing space for something new to grow. I spent that night at Sarah's apartment, my phone silenced as notifications poured in from family, friends, and even acquaintances who had heard about the dramatic scene at Bellamy's. Sarah made up her guest bed with fresh sheets, handed me a glass of real wine instead of the sparkling cider I had secretly been drinking at dinner, and simply said, "I am proud of you." Those 4 words brought the first genuine tears of the evening. Not tears for Jake or our marriage, not even tears for Lisa's betrayal, but tears of relief that someone saw my strength rather than focusing on what I had lost. The next morning, Jake called 17 times before I finally answered. His voice sounded rough, as though he had been crying or had not slept. "Karen, please. Can we meet to talk about this? I know I messed up, but 5 years has to count for something." "It counted for something," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "It counted enough that I deserved honesty from the beginning. It counted enough that you should have respected our marriage instead of sleeping with my sister." "I never meant for any of this to happen," he insisted, a refrain I was beginning to find hollow. "It was a mistake that got out of control." "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, or saying something hurtful in anger," I countered. Having a months-long affair with my sister while hiding your medical condition from me for years is a series of deliberate choices. I was afraid, Jake admitted, his voice dropping to a whisper. When I was diagnosed at 19, the doctor said I would never father biological children. I felt like less of a man. When I met you, I fell so hard so fast. I was terrified of losing you if you knew the truth. Despite everything I felt, a flicker of sympathy for the 19-year-old Jake, receiving news that shattered his expectations for his future. But that sympathy could not outweigh the years of deception. I might have accepted it, Jake. We could have discussed adoption or sperm donors or chosen to be childless together. But you took that choice from me. You watched me blame myself, take fertility supplements, cry every month, all while knowing the truth. I know, he said, regret heavy in his voice. I know it was wrong. I just kept waiting for the right moment to tell you, and it never came. And Lisa? Was she just another wrong choice that spiraled out of control? His hesitation told me everything. Lisa pursued me, he finally said. After she moved back, she would show up at my office, text me constantly. She kept saying she understood me in ways you never could, that she would accept me as I am. So you slept with her out of gratitude. The acid in my tone was unmistakable. It was not like that. She made me feel wanted, desired. With our fertility issues, you and I were drifting apart. Issues you created through lies, I reminded him. And now she is pregnant with someone else's child while thinking it might be yours, which is medically impossible. Congratulations on your miracle, baby Jake. He made a strangled sound. She swore she was not seeing anyone else. She said she loved me. And you believed her because you wanted to, just like I believed you for 5 years. We circled the same points repeatedly until I finally ended the call, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. I had said my piece. I had stood my ground. The divorce papers were being prepared, and soon this painful chapter would be legally closed. Lisa was less direct in her approach. First came texts alternating between rage and tearful apologies. When those went unanswered, she enlisted our mother to plead her case. My phone rang late that evening, my mother's name flashing on the screen. I briefly considered ignoring it, but decided that avoidance would only delay the inevitable conversation. Karen, my mother began, her voice thick with tears. We need to talk about what happened. I am not sure there is much to say, Mom. Lisa is devastated. She made a terrible mistake, but she is still your sister. Family has to forgive family. The familiar refrain made my jaw clench. Did she tell you she is still claiming to be pregnant with Jake's baby despite the medical report proving that is impossible? My mother hesitated. She says the doctors could be wrong. Medical miracles happen. And the photos with 3 other men, is she claiming those are fake? She says they were just friends, that the photos were taken out of context. My mother paused. Karen, I know you are hurt. What they did was inexcusable, but holding on to anger only hurts you in the end. This is not about anger, Mom. This is about recognizing that some relationships are too damaged to repair. Lisa has been taking things from me our entire lives with your and Dad's blessing. This was just the final straw. We never meant to favor her, my mother protested. We were just trying to keep the peace. By always making me be the one to compromise. By expecting me to give in, give up, or give away whatever Lisa wanted. My mother was quiet for a long moment. Maybe we did fail you that way, she admitted finally. But please do not cut us all out of your life because of Lisa's mistakes. I am not cutting you out, Mom. I just need space to rebuild my life on my terms, without Lisa in it. The conversation ended with no real resolution, but it was the most honest exchange I had ever had with my mother. Perhaps that was a beginning of sorts. Lisa herself showed up at Sarah's apartment the following day, her eyes red-rimmed, her normally immaculate appearance disheveled. Sarah answered the door and immediately tried to close it again. She does not want to see you, Sarah stated firmly. Lisa stuck her foot in the door, wincing as it pressed against her. 5 minutes. Please. I need to explain. Against Sarah's advice, I agreed to speak with Lisa in the building's lobby, a public space where any scene she created would have witnesses. You have humiliated me, Lisa began, her voice quivering with barely contained fury. Everyone is talking about me, saying terrible things. You humiliated yourself, I corrected her. You slept with my husband, lied about a pregnancy, and tried to announce it at my birthday dinner to deliberately hurt me. What did you expect would happen? I expected you to break down crying like you always do, to run away and hide while I finally got something you had. Her honest outburst seemed to surprise even her, and she immediately tried to backtrack. I did not plan it this way. Jake and I just fell in love. Jake cannot be the father of your baby, Lisa. That is a medical fact, not my opinion. She wrapped her arms protectively around her midsection. The doctors must be wrong. It happens all the time. Are the photos wrong too? The ones showing you with multiple men during the same time period you were seeing Jake? Lisa's face flushed. Those were nothing, just flirtations. In hotel rooms. In the back seat of your car, I shook my head in disbelief. The level of denial you are capable of is truly extraordinary. Fine, she exploded. Maybe I was seeing other people too. Jake was so serious all the time, always talking about commitment and the future. I needed some fun too. So you used him, just like you have used everyone in your life. Her expression turned ugly. He was using me too. He wanted out of his marriage to you, but was too cowardly to do it himself. He thought a baby announcement would force the issue, make you file for divorce, so he would not have to be the bad guy. The revelation should have hurt, but instead it merely confirmed what I already knew about Jake's character. Congratulations to both of you then. You deserved each other. What are you going to do now? Lisa demanded, suddenly sounding uncertain. About the family, about the baby? I am going to live my life without either of you in it. As for your baby, I genuinely hope you figure out who the father is for the child's sake. Mom and Dad are devastated. They say you refuse to work things out. They think you are being unreasonable. Their opinions stopped mattering to me the moment they suggested I should forgive you to keep the peace. Some things are unforgivable, Lisa. Her face crumpled, a flash of the little sister I had once protected peeking through the woman who had betrayed me. So, that is it. 29 years of being sisters gone. We have not been real sisters since you decided taking what I had was more important than having a relationship with me. I stood and walked toward the elevator, ignoring her calls for me to come back. As the doors closed, I caught a last glimpse of her standing alone in the lobby, looking smaller and more lost than I had ever seen her. For a moment, I felt a pang of something like grief for the sister relationship we might have had in another life, one where she had not been spoiled and I had not been burdened with being the responsible one. The days that followed brought more confrontations, more tears, more attempts at reconciliation from both Jake and Lisa. My parents vacillated between pressuring me to forgive and acknowledging the depth of the betrayal. Friends and colleagues expressed shock support or morbid curiosity depending on their relationship to me. Through it all, I focused on practicalities. I met with Patricia, who assured me the divorce would likely be finalized quickly given the circumstances. I found a temporary apartment to rent while deciding whether to sell our house or buy Jake out of his share. I requested a week off from teaching to get my affairs in order, grateful for a principal who valued privacy and did not ask for details. Piece by piece, I dismantled the life I had built with Jake and began constructing something new from the rubble. Each decision I made alone felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been subsumed in compromise and accommodation. For the first time in my adult life, I answered to no one but myself, and the freedom was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. 6 months after my explosive birthday dinner, I stood in the empty living room of what was once my marital home, now sold to a young couple expecting their first child. The irony was not lost on me, but it felt right somehow, like the house would finally witness the family it was meant to hold. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. Jake did not contest anything once Patricia presented the evidence of his infidelity and medical deception. He signed over his claim to the house in exchange for keeping his retirement accounts intact, a deal that benefited us both. With the proceeds from the house sale, I had purchased a sunlit condo in a downtown high-rise, a complete departure from the suburban home Jake and I had shared. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city park, and for the first time I had decorated without compromising my taste to accommodate anyone else's preferences. The space was mine alone, filled with books, vibrant artwork, and houseplants that transformed the modern space into a personal sanctuary. My healing journey had not been linear. There were days when anger consumed me when I typed furious messages to Jake or Lisa that I ultimately deleted unsent. There were nights when I cried for the children I would never have, with the man I had loved for the future I had planned that would never materialize. But there were also moments of unexpected joy of rediscovery. I joined a support group for people recovering from betrayal trauma where I found understanding without judgment. Through those meetings, I met Diane, a divorce attorney who had survived her own husband's infidelity and now channeled her experience into helping others navigate similar situations. The thing about betrayal, Diane told me during one of our coffee meetings after group, is that it destroys your story about your life. You have to build a new narrative one, where the betrayal is part of your history but not your identity. Her words resonated deeply. I had been defining myself as Jake's wife, as Lisa's responsible older sister, as the family peacemaker for so long that I hardly knew who Karen was without those roles. Finding out was both terrifying and liberating. I started small, rediscovering preferences I had buried for the sake of harmony. I took a weekend pottery class, something Jake had dismissed as messy and impractical. I traveled alone to the coast, spending 3 days walking beaches and reading novels in seaside cafes. I reconnected with college friends I had lost touch with during my marriage, women who reminded me of the ambitious, independent person I had been before. Sarah remained my steadfast supporter, never once saying "I told you so" about Jake or Lisa, though she had never trusted either of them. Instead, she celebrated each step of my recovery, no matter how small. As for my family, the landscape had shifted permanently. Lisa gave birth to a baby boy 4 months after my birthday dinner. DNA testing confirmed that the father was not Jake but Marcus, the married man she had been seeing concurrently. Marcus's wife left him, and he reluctantly agreed to co-parent with Lisa, though their relationship was strained at best. Jake, upon learning he was definitely not the father, moved to Seattle for a fresh start. According to mutual friends, he had joined a support group for people with infertility and was finally confronting the shame that had driven him to lie to me for years. Part of me hoped he would find peace and perhaps someday build an honest relationship with someone new. My parents struggled to navigate the new reality of our fractured family. My father, to his credit, eventually acknowledged the role he and my mother had played in enabling Lisa's behavior throughout our lives. We thought we were helping her by giving her extra attention, he admitted during a difficult but necessary conversation, but we were really teaching her that she could take whatever she wanted without consequences. I am sorry we put that burden on you, Karen. My mother found it harder to accept the permanence of the rupture between her daughters. She is still your sister, she would say plaintively during our weekly phone calls. And now you have a nephew. Biology does not make a family, I would reply gently, but firmly. Trust and respect do. Lisa and I may share DNA, but we will never again share a relationship. Over time, my parents came to accept my decision, if not understand it fully. They visited my new condo, carefully avoiding mention of Lisa or her son. We were building a new kind of relationship, adult to adult, rather than parent to child. And while it was sometimes awkward, it was also more honest than what we had before. The most surprising development in my recovery came through my work. Teaching had always been my passion, but I had limited myself to the safe confines of elementary education. With my personal life in upheaval, I found myself reconsidering my professional goals as well. I enrolled in a master's program in educational psychology, fascinated by how early experiences shape children's development and relationships. My thesis focused on resilience in children from challenging family dynamics research that helped me understand both Lisa's behavior and my own responses to our upbringing. Upon completing my degree, I was offered a position at a children's mental health clinic, working with families navigating difficult transitions. The irony of helping others heal family wounds while my own remained unresolved was not lost on me, but perhaps that was precisely why I was effective in the role. I understood both the desire to preserve family relationships at all costs and the necessity of sometimes letting them go for one's own well-being. As I locked the door of my former home for the final time, I felt a sense of completion rather than loss. The keys in my hand represented not just the transfer of property, but the closing of a chapter in my life story. Walking to my car, I reflected on the profound lessons of the past 6 months. I had learned that self-respect must precede any healthy relationship, that forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation, That family can be chosen rather than merely inherited. That endings, however, painful create space for new beginnings. I had also learned my own strength. The woman who had stood in Bellamy's restaurant and calmly exposed the betrayal of her husband and sister was someone I had not known existed within me until circumstances forced her emergence. She was someone I had grown to admire and finally to love. Sometimes the family you choose becomes more valuable than the one you were born into. I may have lost a husband and a sister that day, but I found something more precious, something that could never be taken from me again myself. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that choosing your own well-being is not selfish, it is necessary. Thank you for being part of my healing journey, and I hope my story helps you find the strength to write your own ending when needed.